Okay, so today we are going to talk about how to set up the ServiceStorm platform to benefit your business, all of the bells and whistles and features, and how they can benefit you and your company. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first thing that you'll need to do to get started to use ServiceStorm is set up your team. So you can get to that by clicking the Team Members tab on the left sidebar here. And on here, we will see a list of our team members. So in ServiceStorm, you can have a team member assigned as office staff or a field technician or both. We also have some pretty robust permissions here that allow you to control what users are allowed to see and not see on the platform. If a user is not assigned as a field technician, you will not be able to assign jobs for them. We are assuming those people are just dispatchers or office managers, etc., and they will not be accepting jobs. So once you have a team member marked as a field technician, the next thing that you'll need to do is set up their technician profile by going down here to technicians. So we can take a look at this technician, for example. This technician's name is Oscar Edge, and we have him set to have one allowed job category of HVAC. Job categories are something that you need to set up. Every job within ServiceStorm needs to have a job category associated with it, and technicians will need to be assigned allowed job categories, which tells the system that this technician is allowed to work jobs in a specific job category. The purpose of this feature is to try to prevent the dispatcher from making errors, for example, by setting a HVAC technician on a plumbing job or vice versa. So that is the purpose of this. So to assign any job, you will need to set up job categories. And once those are set up, you would then assign a technician an allowed job category. And that should be all you need to get your first job out the door. However, while we're here, we'll touch on skills and qualifications. This is another feature that gives you another layer of protection. This could be something like a certification, a special tool, being bilingual, etc., that you can give to the technician. And if he has it, then he will be allowed to work jobs that have that skill and qualification associated with it. But these fields are totally optional. Additionally, we have a clock-in pin, so the system will track your technician's labor hours, etc. So we need to set them up a clock-in pin here. And lastly, we need to set their hourly rate. So we could say we're going to pay him $50 an hour. And now that is set. And so any job that he works, we'll be using that to calculate the labor, the amount of time on job, etc., as well as his shifts and how much money we need to pay him, etc. So that is how we set up a technician profile. Now we'll cover the customer screen by going here on the left side. We can click on customers. So once you're in the customers, you can search customers by name, email, phone number, etc. to easily find and locate the customer that you want to work with. You can create new customers by clicking add customer up here at the top. And now we'll take a look at an existing customer here. So within the customer screen, on this customer information panel, we see this is actually a business. So this is the business entity name. This is the first and last name of the contact at the business. And then these we are considering billing information. So any bills and invoices will actually go to this information over here on the left, and on the right side is where we have properties. So these, you could think of these as service addresses. So you can have one customer that has multiple service addresses, but you send all the bills to one location. So a property, we can add a new one, can also have an additional property contact. So let's say maybe it's a school system and you want to have the principal on file so that you can call her to have her let you into the school, something along those lines. But you can have as many properties as you want tied to one customer. Additionally, you can have additional contacts. This could just be any arbitrary contacts that you need to keep track of relating to this customer and their job title as well. Additionally, we can see any jobs that we've done in the past for this customer. We can see any quotes that we have sent to this customer. We can see any time that this customer has filled out our lead form on our website, which we can touch on later. And then we can also see any invoices that we have sent to them. We can see any files or images associated with them. So any pictures or files that were uploaded by the field techs while they're doing jobs for this customer would all show up here. And then lastly, we have billing information. This can store their payment method on file. So from here, we can easily create a job for said customer. We can edit their customer information, etc. Now we can touch on creating a job. So when creating a new job, you have two options. You can come to the Jobs tab over on the left side, or you can go to Add a New Job here, and you can select the customer, search their name, find them that way. Additionally, you could go to the customer screen, find the customer that you would like to create a job for, and we can just say New Job. And this will go ahead and pre-populate the customer information, but we still need to select which property we're talking about, what job category this job will be for. And then a reference number is an optional number that you can put in that is followed through the life cycle of the job. Any quotes, invoices, etc. will show the reference number. And then we also have notes as well. So I can go ahead and create this job. And here we are. Now we are on the job that we just created. Now that we are on a job, we can see lots of data associated with the job. We can see any visits. So in this case, we have one job visit that is scheduled to be sent out. We can see any quotes associated with this job. So a job can have one or many quotes. We can also see the invoices. None have been sent out just yet, but we'll send one out momentarily. So a job can have one or many invoices, allowing progress billing. We can also see any expenses. So you can add expenses. The field text, let's say they go to Home Depot, grab a few parts. They can then take a picture of their receipt, punch in the information, and you will see that up here in the expenses tab. We can also see any files that were uploaded from the field, or you can add files and images here. We also see any notes that were taken in the field, or again, you can add them from this screen as well. So that is the job screen overview. Now we'll touch on dispatching and how we assign jobs to technicians. So when we're in a job, we can easily add a new visit here by doing this, and we see various things. We can add a customer request, we can add required skills, we can set a arrival window. The estimated time determines how much time that it takes on the dispatch view. We can also add line items, so it's a common practice to maybe add a trip charge here, and then you can create that, and it will be not assigned. And we will now need to go to the dispatch board to assign that job, or we could leave it and assign it another day. So in this case, the easiest way, if let's say this was on a different date, we could click here and go to view on schedule. So this takes us there and it automatically pins the job. For now, I will close this out so we can get a better view. But this is the dispatch board. So what we have is we see the timeline of our crews and our technicians here. And to assign a job, these are all our unassigned visits. We're going to simply drag and drop it to whichever technician or crew we need to assign this job to. So let's say we want to give this to John Appleseed. Actually, I cannot. So this is a good example of where John Appleseed does not have the correct allowed job category or potentially a skill on his technician profile to accept this job, which is why I can't drop it. However, Cameron does. So I can drop this on Cameron at 11 a.m. And now that job is assigned to him and he would see it on his phone. And if I want to assign this job, let's assign this job to Beta Crew. And when you're on the screen, if you need to make an adjustment to a technician profile, you can click here and go directly to their profile and make any adjustments that you need. To change days that you're looking at in the top right corner, you can either select this and go to the next day, or you can hit these arrows and it will move you around from day to day where we're looking at each day individually. If you need to move a job to a different day, you can do that by hovering, pin, and now we can see this pins over to the left side. Let's say we want to reschedule this job for tomorrow. We can go to tomorrow, and now we can say move to this day, and there we go. We now have successfully moved this job to this day. So that is how we move jobs around. You can also, from this button up here, you can pin all unscheduled visits or pin all visits, and that will pin them all. And then let's say you were rained out, you could move every job to another day. Additionally, we also have a map view. So this would show you all of your technicians on a map. So we're tracking the GPS location of their phones, and so you would see them on the map. In this case, we don't see any, but I could show you an example where we may. So if we go to the dispatch board here, go to the timeline, here we go. So now we see where all of our technicians are on a map, as well as if we had any jobs, we would see those as pins on the map as well. Let me hop back over here. And the last thing that I'll touch on the dispatching is the calendar view. So when you go to calendar, by default, what you're looking at is just global information about if you have any unassigned jobs or any scheduled jobs or completed jobs on a given day. This is useful if you just want to see, hey, did I miss a job that was left unassigned and we didn't get it assigned to anyone? But if you would like to see a specific technician's schedule, you can click on their image and you will now see their schedule. You can change this to a day view. So we'll see this job here. You could change this to a week view, so we'd see all his jobs for the week, and that is how the calendar view works. Additionally, if you only want to work with a specific job category, you can select this, and this will hide all jobs except for the jobs that are in that job category. So this is useful for if you have multiple dispatchers doing different categories of jobs. That helps filter the things out that are not needed to be seen at that time. And lastly, on the dispatch, if you ever hover over one of these, you can click your little eyeball, and this pulls you up a overview of what's going on with this job, who it's assigned to, the schedule, and so on. If you want to send them a schedule notification, you can do that. This is for the purpose of saying, hey, we've scheduled you for this day, or if it's a reschedule notification, the system will be able to detect that and do that as well. And if you want to get back to the parent job, because this is really just a job visit, we can hit view job, and this will take us directly back to the job that this is from. Additionally, one more thing that I did want to touch on, if you need to assign multiple technicians to a job, right now we only have one, but I can select multiple technicians just like this. And now this will be assigned to both of those technicians. If I hover over it, pop it back open, we'll now see that. If I go back to view job, we can then see that this is assigned to multiple technicians. One important thing to note about working with the dispatch screen, if you ever cannot see one of your technicians, it's one of two things. Either they are assigned to a crew. By default, we hide those. So if you click up here and say show crew assigned technicians, this will show all your technicians, even the ones that are assigned to crews. And to hide them, you can say hide crew assigned technicians. The other reason we may not see them is maybe they're off that day. So work schedules are set up here under team management. You can select one of your technicians and we can set them a weekly schedule. So in this case, we can see he is set for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and he is off Saturday and Sunday. However, if this is his normal weekly schedule, so this will go out into the future, but if we need to edit that, we can click on his schedule like this and mark one of the days off. And now he will not have any shifts on Wednesday. But if let's say maybe it's a special Wednesday and he has an on-call shift, I can add an extra shift by doing this. And now we can see he has an extra shift and maybe he's going to be off on Friday. So we can do this and we can give information about him being on a day off, and maybe now he's off on Friday. So now if we go to the 29th on the dispatch board, we'll see that he is not available to drop jobs on. So go there and he's not there. If I go the day before where he is on shift, he is. Go back to the day he's off and he's missing. So if you ever can't see a technician, it is either their work schedule or that they are assigned to a crew. So when it comes to creating a quote, you can create a standalone quote by going to quotes, create quote, find this customer and send it off. And this quote would be standalone, meaning it is not associated with any job. However, if you would like to create a quote within a job, you can do that by, once you're inside of the job, go to the quotes tab, create quote, and now everything should be pre-populated, the build to address, the job category, the customer, etc. The only thing that we'll need to select here is contract template. So whenever it comes to invoicing, we have contracts. The customer will be faced with this contract and they'll have to sign for it. It'll show them the amount that the quote they're agreeing to, the date, etc., as well as any legal verbiage that you put in your contract. And you can edit your contracts by going to contracts, contract templates, and then we can open this one up and edit it here. And we see this is all the information that is in our contract. So when we go back to create this quote, we'll be able to see that we can select this contract from the dropdown, and contracts are required for sending out quotes. So make sure that you have one in place before trying to send out a quote. Once that's done, we can see we can set up a job summary, we can add files or images, and then we have our quoting system here. So we can add line items that are already from our book by saying add service. So here's items from our price book that are already set up. So let's say we add a trip charge for $35. We can also add materials that are in our price book by doing the same thing. Add a material, and let's say we have arbitrary line items that are not yet in our system. We're also able to just add random line items this way and fill it in with whatever data we need to. Quotes are able to have discounts, surcharges, etc. You can also set taxes, which are set in the configuration center by selecting one of your predefined taxes. You can also just add a sales tax by clicking this button here and then selecting it. So now we would be adding tax to that, just to that line item. And once we have an option built out, we can send multiple options. So we can do a good, better, best. So if we want to rename this option to be called best, we can now clone it by clicking this copy button. If we want to add a blank option, we can hit add option and it would start a totally blank one. However, if we want to have this be similar, but maybe it's just a little bit less expensive, we can call this better. And now maybe we can drop off this breaker. Now we're only charging them for that. So now the customer is going to see multiple options, and you can add as many options as you want here in the quoting system. And then you can just create this quote, and this is what it looks like. So this is what the customer would see. Whenever we hit send quote, we could send it by email and text, and they would get this and could pop it open and see everything. They could then see the two different options and choose between whichever one they like. Once they hit accept quote, they would then sign for it. We can also download it, print it, etc., and edit it by clicking that. I can show you what it would look like from the customer's perspective by copying the link and going to it. This is the link that the customer would get, and this is what it would look like. So if the customer sees this and says, I want to accept this quote, they're going to say accept quote. They will see the contract agreement, the quote number, the date, the amount. At the bottom, they'll sign for it, apply signature, sign and accept, and there we go. This is now an accepted quote, and not only will they get a copy of that contract, you will also get an update, an email saying, hey, this customer just accepted the quote. And now if we go back to our job, we'll now see that we have this new accepted quote that we just created. Now we'll talk about invoicing. So if you already have an accepted quote, it is very simple to just click these three dots right here, create an invoice, and this will create an invoice matching exactly what we added from the quote that the customer accepted. So once we're here, we can now theoretically just go ahead and save this, create invoice, and send it out. It's as easy as that. However, if you need to add more line items, you can do it very similarly to the quotes here. If you would like to pass the processing fee of the cards onto the customer, you can do that by checking this on, and we'll see it adds the surcharge. It'll do that calculation for you, and it will mark up your line items on the invoice. So the customer would actually not see this extra $2.60. They would just see it as these line items were marked up by 4% to cover the fee. We can set the due date, the issue date. We can change the payment terms. We can give it a description. We can give it notes. And then we can set payment reminders, check these or uncheck these. These get sent 3 days after the due date and so on. We can also add files and images to our invoice if we so choose. And now we can create this. And this is what the invoice will look like. And again, the customer will get, when we say send invoice, the customer will get, you can choose between email email, text, or both. And now we can take a look at what this would look like. And this is the view from the customer's perspective. So if payment processing is set up in your ServiceStorm account, they will have a Pay Now button that will pop up and show them the payment form. However, in this case, since this is a demo account, we do not have that set up, but we can take a payment for it manually. So let's say the person wants to pay us in cash. We can go here and say record payment, and we can record this payment of $57. And now we can see the balance due is 0, and this invoice is considered paid. We can now go back to our job, and we can see that there. And now we can consider this job complete. We can say edit job, and now we can mark this guy as complete. Now that we have marked our job complete, we can now send out our review link to the customer by clicking send review link. And again, we're going to select between email or text, and the customer will get a link that they can then open and leave a review. So we'll take a look at that now. Here's an example of what the review email would look like. They can select leave a review, and now they will be faced with the screen. They can choose between different stars. If they select, let's say, 3 stars and submit the rating, we are only going to ask them for a feedback because we do not want them to go leave a review on Google, Yelp, or Facebook for us. However, if I refresh this and the user says, okay, 5 stars, we're going to actually show them, thank you. Would you mind going and leaving the review on Google, Facebook, or Yelp? And so you will set those up inside of your company profile, what these links will be, and then the user can then immediately go and fill in those super critical Google reviews for your company. And once they fill that in, you will see all of your reviews in the reviews tab here. Let me switch over and I can show you an example. Here we go. So now we have a couple of reviews here that we can take a look at. And if, let's say, this was a bad review, we can say view job details and be taken directly to see what went wrong on this job and what the issue was that the customer was complaining about. So that is our review and reputation management solution there. Okay, and next very important feature to cover is leads and lead forms. So what we have here are lead forms that are embeddable on your website. So you can edit these forms, open them up, and you are welcome to edit them and change them to match your branding as much as possible. So let's say maybe our branding is, I don't know, red. We can do this and we can see our button is changing. We can change the style from outline to filled, etc. We can change the fonts and so on to try to get this form to match as closely as possible to your website. Once you have this form set, you can then copy the embed code, or you can just provide this link on your website and the users will be taken directly here to fill in the form. When filling in the form, if the customer is already a customer, we're going to ask for their email and we'll do that lookup for you so that the customer doesn't have to refill in their information. However, if they are a new customer, they will need to fill in all of the information again. So let's say if I want to say this is a test at test.com, we can see we found no customer, and so we were asking the customer for their information. However, if I use a customer that I know is a customer in our system, it will pre-populate for them. There we go. We already have all your information. We're just validating it. And now we're going to go on to next. And this is going to ask them what service are they looking for, pick the date that they need, and then what is their preferred time. And then they can submit this request. Once this request is submitted, it will show up in your leads here. And we will see it show up like this. We can check it out, look at it, see what this lead is about. We can work it by marking it new, in progress, converted, closed, etc. And in this case, this customer already exists, so we can just be taken straight to the customer. However, if the customer did not exist, there would be a button here to convert to customer if you want to proceed to work this job. So if you embed that form on your website, you can then easily collect leads and convert them straight into jobs in your ServiceStorm workflow. Okay, now we'll touch on setting up your company information. If you click on your icon down here, go to company. This is where you can set your company logo that will be set on your emails, your invoices, your quotes, etc. You can also get your portal link for your customers to log into. If you copy this link, you could put this on your website, etc. So your customers are able to come here and log in, and they would be able to see any of their information, their invoices, quotes, etc. And here we can also set a very important thing is our review link. So this is where we're going to set what the customer sees after they finish leaving us a review. So we can say edit, and this is where we would put in our Google review link, our Facebook, and our Yelp link. You don't have to provide all 3, but if you want to, you can. And also on the right side, we have our business hours. So this is important for the dispatch board. Whenever you are seeing the dispatch, I'll show you that. By default, we're only going to see the time of our company business hours. However, if you need to see the full day, you can, but those business hours in the company setup control this board as well. Now we'll touch on the price book. So whenever you are setting up your price book, you need to set up first categories for your services. We show them to you as a table, or if you prefer, you can view them in a tree format. You can have as many categories or subcategories as you desire. Once you have that set up, you can then go in and create your services. So if I take a look at one of these, we have name, unit of measure, etc., and you can have as many price levels as you desire. So maybe if we want a commercial price for this, maybe we want to make it more expensive if this is a commercial price, and this will allow the field techs or the person doing the quote in the back office the ability to just easily click a drop down and select which price. You can also go ahead and associate materials with a service. So if you have a service that has predefined materials that are always used whenever you perform that, you can go ahead and add those here, and whenever you select this service on your quote, it will pre-populate, go ahead and add those materials in for you without you having to manually do it. Materials, very similar. We're going to set up material categories, and then we're going to go in and set up our materials, add new material. We do have some AI features here that we are able to use. If you want to type in the name of the material and then click this little button, it will then do its best to populate the rest of this information for you, selecting from your categories and so on. So that is a handy little tool that we have there. Now we'll touch on StormPay here. This is how we allow taking payments via ACH and cards, and this is also how we make money as a company. So on the left side here, we see StormPay, and then on the right side, we have a Stripe integration. And so if you use Stripe, our processing is 4% plus 30 cents per transaction, and the ACH transfers are 1.5%. StormPay is much cheaper. However, it is for established businesses, and it does require underwriting with a bank, and they'll do a risk assessment and all of that stuff. So this process can take anywhere from 24 hours to a week, depending on how risky they deem your business and the things that they ask for. However, with Stripe, you can get up and going literally within minutes by just selecting Stripe as your payment processor, continue, and then you'll be taken to an onboarding flow to fill out all the information about your business via Stripe. So that's how you set up a payment processor. Once you have a valid payment processor set up and ready to go, you will then see the Pay Now button on your invoices. So let's touch on some of these configuration options. Down here below StormPay, we have configuration. So this is where we set up our job categories. This is where we set up our job skills, customer requests that are used on job visits. We also have our company set up. So this is a guide that you can follow to get yourself set up. We also have custom fields. So custom fields are able to be added to customers. They're able to be added to jobs and so on. So you can create as many or as few of these as you need to just track random pieces of data that apply to your business. And then we also have our tax setup here where you can set up the taxes that can be selected from whenever building out quotes and that sort of thing. Okay, so that covers everything we wanted to get through in this demo on how to use ServiceStorm and get your business up and running. This does not cover the functionality of the mobile app, but we do have a demo on that. If you would like to see that, go check that out. If you ever need to reach us, you can do so by hitting this question mark in the bottom corner. You can grab our phone number, give us a ring. You can reach us at support@servicestorm.io, or the best and fastest way to get feedback is joining our Discord. We have other customers in there. We have our sales team in there, our development team in there, so you can get instant feedback in there. So we look forward to seeing you there. So thank you for taking the time to watch this demo, and I'm excited to see how ServiceStorm helps you streamline your operations and grow your business.